Please be seated. I am a person, as with many folks, who has a small circle of friends. It's not that those are the only friends I have, but in my life there is this small circle in the middle, and there are probably 3 or 4 people in that circle. Then there's a circle that circles that circle, and there are more people in there. And then there's a circle beyond that, so that I have quite a few friends, but the ones that I know in that circle are a fairly small number. It's a group of people. This may be true for you. Sometimes there are folks that have been lifelong friends, some are more recent, various kinds of contacts there. And with these folks, I can probably talk with them 2 or 3 times a week, or email with them 2 or 3 times a week, or I may go 2 or 3 months and not have any contact with each other. Yet when we do, we have that immediate rapport. When it's been a particularly challenging day or week or month or year, I'm inclined to pick up my phone or email them and say, "You got a minute?" And they email back, and I'll call them. And we'll talk for quite a while. And one of the things that I know will happen when I call them is that in that conversation they will somehow bring to me encouragement, support, and comfort. After all, that's what friends do, isn't it? Friendship is important. Our gospel today, in its own way, is a gospel about friendship, as strange as that may sound. Mark's gospel is a very bare gospel. It was the first one written. Matthew and Luke probably had it in front of them as they were writing their own. You can go through and pick out Mark out of each of those Gospels. But Mark's idea was he wanted to give us the bare facts. And he wanted to put them out there for us to read and see. He wanted us to know Jesus in this way. But he also does something that the other Gospel writers does not do. He sometimes paints a picture of Jesus that is a bit unflattering. You and I, we have this image of Jesus as God. We've always affirmed throughout our historical theology that Jesus is both God and human, but sometimes we get uncomfortable with his being human. And I have to tell you, this gospel today makes me a bit uncomfortable. For you see, Jesus goes out into Gentile territory. I suspect he's just worn out. He's tired of all of this stuff happening. He's tired of everybody coming to him about things. So he goes to someone's home. And he doesn't want anyone to know he's there. And guess what? It doesn't work. And there was a Gentile woman, a Syrophoenician woman, Mark tells us, who found out he was there, but she knew something else too. She knew that her daughter had an unclean spirit. Now, any of us who have been a parent know what it's like to have a child with an unclean spirit. That just goes with the territory, and we often look for someone to help purge them because we can't do it. But this is a serious matter for her, and she goes to Jesus. She doesn't just go to him, but she walks up to him and she begs him, "Sir, please cast this spirit out of my child." All fine and good, a good story up till now. And then Jesus opens his mouth. And what he says is, let's just cast the food to the children, give it to them first, but let's save the dogs for last. He called the little girl a dog. The little Gentile girl a dog. I wish that Jesus had had some friends there with him. For you see, one of the things I've come to expect and know from my friends inside that little tight circle there in the middle is that they will comfort me, they will support me, they will encourage me, but they will also confront me. And they'll say gently or not so gently if I don't get it, what did you do to bring this about? Or where are you in this? Or whoa, wait a minute. You stepped out of line with that. Now you see, when Jesus called her a dog, it's not the little white fluffy dogs that you and I have, or the cute little Labrador mix that I have. For him, a dog was an unclean animal because it was around unclean things and it ate dead things that were unclean. So the dog was unclean. He was calling her an unclean dog. But I like this woman. Oh, I like her a lot. Because in a very short order, she spiritually befriended Jesus. Because she looked at him, and in essence what she said to him is, wait a minute, that may be true in your tradition, but in our tradition, the dogs run around the house and they run under the table. They're little white yappy dogs. That's what we have. And they gather the crumbs under the table. And you know, there are occasions when my daughter or I will drop an extra crumb or put a little something extra down there for them to eat. You see, the dogs in my tradition are different from the dogs in your tradition. They're a part of us. She became a friend of Jesus because she spoke very plainly and very directly and held him accountable in the way that a true friend does. And you see what happens. Jesus looks at her and he says, because you've said that, go home. The demon is gone. The demon is gone. It's a very good thing when our friends support, encourage us, and also hold us accountable. But how would you and I deal if it were a stranger? If it were a stranger. You see, she was a stranger to Jesus. I don't know about you, but it's my tendency when someone I don't know gently or not so gently decides they want to correct me or confront me. It's my tendency to get my spine rather stiff and my jaw rather clenched and go, But are you and I willing to be spiritually befriended by strangers? What would it be like if, as you walked down the street, someone you didn't know walked up to you and said, "Excuse me, but I just noticed you walked right by that homeless person." How would that be? Or how would it be if someone showed up here on a Sunday morning and came in and said, "Now you Episcopalians, you do some good things, but I got to tell you, this isn't good. This thing right here," whatever it may be. How would we answer? You see, what happened that day in that place is that healing took place. But it took place first because this woman was desperate and she came to Jesus. Not for something for her, but for somebody she loved beyond all things. And it took place because Jesus listened. He didn't let it become his immediate reaction. He didn't do what I would do. He listened. And he listened and he heard her soul speaking to him. And he knew. I have some learning to do. And I suspect that you and I are in a similar, if not the same boat with this. It's easy, if not uncomfortable, to have our friends be honest with us. But sometimes we need to stop and realize that Jesus doesn't just come in our friends, but comes in strangers too. And that you and I, as Jesus in this story, need to be able to stop and listen. Listen with our hearts, listen with our minds and with our ears to Jesus in other people. So that's my Labor Day project, if you will. It's to begin this process of honestly hearing from others what I need to hear. Oh, there's still discernment. You and I both know that everything we hear doesn't fall into this category, but we can't do it. You or I, if we don't open ourselves to it. And just think what can happen in our lives if Jesus changed what he was going to do because of a Syrophoenician woman. Just think. And then pray.